Thank you for having me, and greetings to everyone watching. What has happened is that as the coronavirus hit the global community, governments began to lock down various nations so that they can delay or even interrupt the spread of this disease or this virus. Consequently, in terms of social distancing protocols, churches were also not allowed to meet in the same sense that we are used to in terms of worshiping and so forth. And that had unintended consequences in that most, especially pastors and congregations that are in the hinterland and in the rural areas, got affected in terms of their income. As you know, that the ministers of the gospel, priests, and so on, they live on these contributions and tithes that are given by various congregants to help with the running of the church and the ministry. And even those people who were involved full-time in the ministry, like missionaries and church workers, got impacted by this lockdown because the flow of income or revenue, as it stopped with other businesses, it also stopped with the business of God in the church. And so pastors and those working full-time in the ministry were impacted adversely by this. So as business people in the Apostolic Faith Mission, we could not just fold our arms and just watch our pastors who are praying for us, who are giving us pastoral care, remain in that situation. So we then got our national and international leadership together to say what would be the best way to respond rapidly to this dire need that is developing amongst us. And so after a few consultations, the International Business Forum leadership put through a proposal to the Apostolic Faith Mission International Office Bearers, led by none other than the President, Pastor Mahlobo, to say, here is the situation, and this is how we as business people in the church would like to respond to this need. And hence the birth of this COVID-19 Rapid Response Fund for relief for pastors who are impacted negatively by the lockdown. As I mentioned, that the targeted beneficiaries are mostly the pastors who are in the rural areas in various nations that Apostolic Faith Mission is based. So it would be full-time ministers of the gospel who depend entirely on the tithes and contributions that are made by their congregants. It would also be the congregants who serve under these ministries on a full-time basis and also have been affected, and they are in dire straits as a result. The identification process is happening at three levels. The first one is at the national level. As a AFM International Business Forum executive, we looked at the nations that are mostly impacted and affected by the COVID-19 lockdown. Obviously, this is determined by the spread of the virus in various countries. And so once we've identified those countries, we then looked at the regions that are within the borders of that country that are also more impacted than others. And that process led us to understand that in the urban areas, the impact is limited by the fact that people in those areas are affair with electronic banking or digital banking. So even though they are not congregating physically, but they are able to send in their tithes and offering to the banking account of the church. And so the expenses of the church, including the stipends or the income for the pastors and those who are working in the church, is not badly impacted. But then if you look at the regions where they are mostly rural, the people in those regions are not, au fait with digital or electronic banking. And therefore, the flow of income in those has sort of ceased. And that is why the focus is, at the beginning, mostly on those who are in the hinterlands and rural areas. So we were fortunate that in some countries like South Africa, the national leadership of the Apostolic Faith Mission of South Africa has managed to raise some funds that are available to help the ministers and those who are in the ministry who are affected by this. So our focus as AFM International Business Forum, therefore, would exclude South Africa at the moment. And some of the countries that may come on board to say, we have managed to cover our pastors, so please redirect the funding to those who are in need of them. So this is how we have gone about identification of the qualifying regions or areas for help. We would welcome contributions and donations from anybody and everybody who is able to assist. We say charity begins at home, and therefore we start with this appeal to our own members, especially business people who are in the AFM globally. We also are appealing to ordinary members who may not be business people per se, but who may be employed or having other means of generating income. Some may be endowed, through various means and are in a position to make such a donation. And the request is not only for AFM members or AFM business people, but we extend the appeal even to those who are outside the AFM to please consider making a contribution so that we can help those who are negatively affected and impacted by this COVID-19 lockdown. We have a banking account that we are currently using, which is the banking account of the AFM International. It is located at Absa Bank in South Africa. and then the Swiss code will be provided together with the branch account number. And then even the bank account number is provided, which is 4052733348. And as I said, the branch code of Absa Bank is 632005. So people can use that as one option. And the next option, we have set a crowdfunding platform via PayPal, which is www.paypal.me/AFMBUS forum. So people can make payments into one of those platforms, and then those who do can please send proof of payment to afmbfeurope@gmail.com. So it's AFMB for Business Forum and then Europe@gmail.com. I repeat, afmbfeurope@gmail.com. So those are the platforms that people can use to make donations and contributions. We welcome all forms of donations that people can make. The reason we are currently limiting it only to money, or these two platforms seem to be limiting it only to money, is because of the protocols that have been put in various countries, both by the governments in those countries and also by the World Health Organization. So we do not want to be seen to aid the spreading of the virus by encouraging the movement of goods and so forth. So if you send the donation via the bank, it becomes easier to distribute because of technology. The second reason we encourage people to give money, but obviously, as I said, we are open to all kinds of donation, is that we want to also start up, if not fuel up, the local economies. And this is how we see it happen. Once we have received the money, we would then transfer it as a voucher to the beneficiary. And the beneficiary will therefore go to a local shop, grocery shop, or retail store or supermarket, and then exchange that voucher for the grocery. And that way, we are generating economic activity in that local area. So as business people, we thought we will then be able to make a contribution to economic activity that way by distributing money. But anybody who has other things than money and they would like to contribute, they are most welcome to do that. We have set up a number of chapters of the Business Forum in various nations where the Apostolic Faith Mission is represented. And together with those leaders of the Business Forum in those jurisdictions and the International Exco, we also have the Treasurer General of the AFM International, who has been seconded to the AFM International Business Forum to work with us so that we ensure proper accountability. So we've got able men and women who would use the generally accepted accounting practices and the corporate governance protocols that have been set in place to comply with those and make sure that we account. And together with the Treasurer General of the Church, would be able to ensure that nothing falls between the cracks, but there's proper accounting. And post this situation, we hope and are setting in place an audit process wherein we will be able to audit whatever has come in and how it has been distributed so that we produce proper accounts for what has happened with the COVID-19 rapid response relief fund that has been set up by the AFM International Business Forum. We believe in a decentralized distribution channel or system. So once the funds and the goods have been received, we will then use, as I said earlier, the transfer of the funds to a particular beneficiary who will then go to the nearest grocery shop to get the goods that they require. The business forum in that particular country will then assist in ensuring that the distribution happens seamlessly. We also have able leadership in the church, in the regions, in the parishes, and in all the district and national structures who have been convinced to assist in the distribution of these benefits so that there is a rapid response. We also do not want to create bureaucratic systems that will delay the delivery of these benefits to those who deserve or who need them the most. So we want to create that balance between seamless and rapid response, but also ensuring that proper channels are followed. So this is how the distribution of both the funds and the goods will be handled. The initial beneficiaries will be the pastors, as I said, who are mostly located in the rural areas. But obviously, if we get more resources, we will then be able to also look at those members who are working within the church, supporting the pastors in the ministry. And once those are covered and the resources are still available, we will then expand it to the congregants who themselves are found in dire straits. And they will benefit that way. So it's not only limited to the pastors. We have also looked at some congregations who may be hiring facilities to run the ministries from. And because there's been, a slowdown in the income, we may even go to the extent, depending on the availability of resources, to tide them over and close that gap where the income has reduced, but the expenses of running the ministry have remained. So to close that gap so that they are not thrown out of the buildings or the places of worship which they are renting out. So it's an evolving, help that we see, but obviously we want to respond rapidly to those who are looking after us spiritually, who are praying for us, and who are feeding us with the word, and who are caring for us. So those would be the first target in terms of this help that we want to extend. As the saying goes, we were all caught with our pants down. And in January, as we were commencing the year, none of us would have thought that March, April, even up to now, would be sort of a lost time, as it were, because of COVID-19. So what we have learned is that this event happens largely, within a century, 100 years. The first one that is recorded that I can remember, it's in 1820, and there was another one in 1920, and now here's a major one in 2020. So we then need to think innovatively and differently and say we need to create an emergency fund, build up a reserve so that we then prepare for such an eventuality. It may or may not happen in our generation, but the generations that follow us, if the return of Christ is delayed, they would then find a fund that would then be available so that they can respond to those who are in need. So this is the thinking that we are grappling with, we are seized with, to say once we have gone through this period, even the excess funds that we get from this fundraising appeal that we are doing will then be put in that special reserve fund to be able to be available to those who may experience this, sickness or any other major disaster that may happen in the future. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. This is a heartfelt appeal. I call it the Macedonian call to everyone who is watching and under the sound of my voice, to say, may you please find it in your heart to open your wallet, to open your bank account, and give generously to this initiative so that we may extend help to those who are in need. I would also want to encourage you to give cheerfully. As a pastor, I will refer to the scriptures that God favors and loves a cheerful giver. So if you give cheerfully, if you give generously, God himself will be able to bless you in return. The Bible says, if you give, it shall be given back to you, a full measure, pressed down, shaking together, and overflowing. So if you want an overflow in your business, if you want an overflow in your life, I want to appeal to you that invest in this cause to help those who are in dire straits. And God himself will open up an overflow, a channel that you will have in your life. You know, giving is like planting a seed or investing. As you know, the scriptures say, as a farmer, you plant a seed and you go to bed, but you do not know how that seed germinates and become a green shoot and also grows into a tree or a fruitful crop. So in a similar way, if you invest in this rapid response fund to relieve those who are in distress, you will see that this seed that you are planting would also germinate and grow into a bountiful crop that you'll harvest for yourself and for your family. So I implore you to respond urgently and give generously so that we may help those who are in need. And God Himself will ensure that He returns what you've given 60-fold, 100-fold, or even 1,000-fold, according to the measure of your faith. That's what I will say to everyone who's listening.